The rain hammered against the windows of the tiny security office as Daniel Hayes stood frozen, his badge slipping from his trembling fingers. Moments earlier, he had stepped forward to take the blame for a system failure he hadn't caused, one that shut down an entire wing of the massive corporate headquarters. He had done it because the man truly responsible was a young father-to-be, terrified of losing his job. Daniel had simply smiled, said he'd handle it, and now he was fired. The words echoed in his mind like a slow, heavy drum. "You're dismissed, Hayes." The hallway blurred as he walked away, his chest tight, his world collapsing. His daughter's face, little Emma, just 7 years old, floated before him, her dark curls bouncing as she laughed, asking if he'd be home early today. Instead, he would be bringing home a termination letter. And rent was already overdue. That if you believe kindness still matters, if you believe second chances can change lives, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Outside the building, the storm felt almost personal, soaking through Daniel's uniform as he stood beneath the awning and wondered how much worse things could get. He had worked hard his whole life, warehouse shifts, night security, cleaning jobs, anything to take care of his daughter after her mother abandoned him. He never complained, never caused trouble. He followed the rules, helped where he could, and tried to make the world a little softer for Emma. But life never softened for him that he walked to the bus stop with heavy steps, remembering his daughter's lunchbox, pink with unicorn stickers, and how she'd proudly told her teacher that her daddy was the strongest man in the world. If only she knew how small and breakable he felt now. Hours later, after picking her up from school, he forced a smile and held her tiny hand, hiding the truth through sheer will. At home, a cramped apartment that smelled faintly of old paint, he made her favorite noodles and read her stories. She fell asleep with her head on his chest, mumbling that she loved him. But when the room finally grew quiet, Daniel buried his face in his hands and let the tears come. Tomorrow he would have to look for work again. Tomorrow he would have to pretend again. Tomorrow everything would be harder. But tomorrow never arrived the way he expected. Early the next morning, while Daniel was folding Emma's clothes for school, someone knocked at the apartment door. Unexpected knocks were never good. His heart thudded. Maybe the landlord wanting rent. Maybe something worse. When he opened the door, he stumbled back in shock. Standing there, with an umbrella dripping rainwater on the hallway floor, was Adrian Carter, the CEO of the company he had just been fired from. Daniel couldn't speak. Adrian, tall and impeccably dressed even in the storm, looked at him with an expression Daniel had never seen on a CEO's face. Not anger, not disappointment. Something else? Was it regret? Adrian explained in a calm voice that he had reviewed the incident logs the previous night. He knew now that Daniel had taken responsibility for something he didn't do. He knew Daniel had done it to protect a coworker. And he knew Daniel had a daughter he adored. Daniel listened, numb, still unable to understand why the CEO of a billion-dollar corporation would show up to his worn-down apartment building at sunrise. But the moment that struck him hardest came when Adrian stepped inside, looked around the tiny living room filled with children's drawings, and said softly, "I need someone like you." The words didn't make sense at first. Daniel blinked as Adrian explained that he wanted someone honest, loyal, and selfless. Someone who did the right thing even when it cost everything. Working directly for him. Not as security, not as staff, but as a personal operations assistant, someone who would help oversee community programs the company wanted to expand. Daniel almost laughed. He didn't feel like anything valuable. He felt like a man who could barely keep the lights on. But Adrian wasn't offering charity. He spoke to Daniel with respect, with warmth, as if he understood something about hardship. Adrian revealed that he, too, had been raised by a single parent who sacrificed everything to give him a chance. He said he recognized that same strength in Daniel. For the first time in a long time, Daniel felt seen. Over the next few weeks, everything changed in ways he could never have imagined. Adrian placed him in a new role with a salary Daniel never believed he'd earn. He received training, support, mentorship, things people like him rarely got. He worked hard, often staying late, but this time he wasn't exhausted from survival. He was exhausted from purpose that he visited shelters and community centers with Adrian, witnessing firsthand how the programs they built were helping families. He learned how to manage projects, how to communicate with teams, how to lead. And quietly, without him even noticing at first, Daniel began to straighten his shoulders when he walked. He began to believe he was capable of more than scraping by. Emma thrived too. With a stable income, Daniel moved them into a safe, bright apartment. She decorated her new room with fairy lights and posters of stars. She told everyone her daddy worked with a big boss man who helps people. Daniel laughed every time she said it. She spoke like he was a superhero, but beneath the joy, a fear still lingered. He worried the opportunity was temporary, that someone would reveal his lack of education, that he would make a mistake and everything would crumble again. The thought haunted him one afternoon. As they were preparing for a major charity event, Daniel accidentally knocked over a display booth, shattering several glass frames. He froze, panic gripping him. Memories of the day he was fired crashed over him like cold water. He immediately apologized, bracing for the disappointment, the anger, the end of everything. But Adrian simply looked at him and shook his head with a gentle smile. He said that mistakes didn't define a man, character did, and that nothing Daniel could break that day was worth more than the impact he was helping create. For Daniel, the words were life-changing. Months passed, and the once broken single father became someone others trusted, admired, and depended on. He wasn't just an employee anymore. He was a pillar of the company's new outreach division. He was the one greeting families at events, the one organizing support drives, the one inspiring volunteers. He was living a life he had never believed was meant for him. And then came the moment that completed his transformation at the annual company summit. Adrian surprised him by calling him onto the stage in front of hundreds. As Daniel walked up, overwhelmed, Adrian told the story of the man who had been fired, who had been drowning in life's hardships, yet still chose kindness when it mattered most. And he announced that Daniel would now lead the entire community initiative department. The room erupted in applause. Daniel stood there, eyes burning with tears, remembering the man he had been. The man carrying his daughter under a rain-soaked umbrella, jobless, scared, humiliated. And now he stood under bright lights, honored not for perfection, but for heart. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. It helps more than you know and brings more stories of hope to people who need them. And right now, before we reach the end, I want to ask you one special thing. Please comment below what part of this story moved you the most. Your words inspire us to keep creating. Daniel left the stage that night to find Emma waiting for him in the front row, her eyes shining with pride. She ran into his arms and whispered, "Daddy, you really are the strongest man in the world." And for the first time, Daniel believed her.